Next, I'm going to create the rest of the test cases. And in our customer service IMPL, the next operation we have is get customer by ID. So let's write the test case for get customer by ID operation. I will simply use the BDD test template. I will add a display name, and for the name of this test case, so to get customer by ID operation, so we are going to call uh, find by ID method of the customer repository. And before calling the find by ID method, there should be a customer available with a specific ID in the database. So because of that, we have to give a customer object first. So then we can give the name as given customer object, and we are going to call the find by ID method, and then it should return a customer object. In the precondition section, I'm going to copy the this customer object we created earlier, and I will reuse the same code. And then here, after creating the customer object, we have to call the customer repository and save method of the customer repository, and we have to pass that created customer object into the save method so that it will save to the database. The database means our in-memory database. So after it's saved to the database, in the next step, which is the when section, we can call the customer repository method find by ID method of the customer repository. And when calling that method, we have to pass a customer ID into that method. So to pass the customer ID, we can use this customer object here inside this find by ID method, and we can call the get customer ID, and it will return an optional of customer object. So we have to call the get method to get the customer object. Then I'm going to assign that customer object into a customer reference variable like this. And in the then section, to verify the output, we can again use the assert that, and this time we can just check this return customer, which is found customer, is not null. So let's run this test case and see. We can see the test case has passed, and it shows which underline SQL was used in this test case. So let's see the customer service IMPL class again. So next we have this update customer operation to test. So let's go to the customer repository test, and I will again insert the BDD structure. And now we are going to unit test update customer operation. I will add the display name. In this test case, we have to actually provide a customer object. So in the precondition, we have to create a customer object, and then we have to save that customer object uh, into the database by calling the save method of the customer repository. And after that, um, we have to call in the when section, we have to call the find by ID method of the customer repository, and then we can pass the customer ID as the parameter. And once we get that customer object from the database, we can update some values for that customer object. So after updating, we can again save that customer object into the database again by calling the save method of the customer repository. And after that, we can use the assert statements to verify the output. So I'm going to create a customer. Let me copy the code from the previous test case. And after creating the customer object, in the precondition section, we have to call the customer repository dot save method, and we have to pass the created customer object. And in the when section, we have to first call the find by ID method of the customer repository to get the same customer, and then we have to update that customer. So that's what we do in the customer service IMPL also. If we go to the customer service IMPL, here we are getting the customer object first by calling the find by ID method of the customer repository. And once we get the customer object, we are updating the values of the customer object, and then we are again saving that customer into the database by using the save method of the customer repository. So we will do the same thing here. Customer repository dot find by ID, and I'm going to pass the customer dot get customer ID. So the same customer object we created, and then I'm going to assign that return customer object into found customer, and we have to use the get because this will only return an optional of customer, and to get the actual customer object we have to use the get, and it will return the customer object. And once the customer object return, we can update some details of the returned customer object. So I will update the first name to something like Mark, and I will update the last name also. Now we have updated the customer object, and next we have to save that customer object, updated customer object, by calling the save method of the customer repository like this. And it will return an updated customer object, so we can assign that return customer object into the updated customer. So in verify the output section, we can use the assert that, and I'm going to use the updated customer, and let's check the updated values. So let's get the first name, because we updated the first name of the customer, and let's use is equal to, and we updated the first name to Mark, so I'm going to use the Mark as the expected value, and the actual value will compare against the expected value, so we have used the Mark as the expected value. And same thing we can do for the uh, last name also. Updated customer dot get last name, get customer last name, and it should be equal to Smith. Now we have to complete the name. So here also we are giving a customer object. So we can give the name as given customer object when update customer, because we are updating a customer, right? So that's why we are giving this as update customer, and then return updated customer. So let's run this test case. We get the result as pass, and we can see the underlying SQL also. So the next one we have to test is delete customer operation. So let's go to the customer repository test, and again let's insert the structure JUnit test for delete customer operation. And in this case also, first we have to give a customer object, and we have to save that into the database in the precondition section. And after that we can call the delete by ID method of the customer repository in this when section, and then after calling that method, we can again call find by ID method in this when section to see whether that customer has been actually deleted from the database. So after calling the find by ID method, we can then put that resultant value into a optional of customer reference variable, and then we can use that returned value in the verifying section with the assert that statement to check whether it is empty. So I'm going to give the name as given customer object when here we are going to delete. So when delete, then it is not going to remove return anything. It's going to remove the customer. So we can mention that remove customer. So in the precondition, as usual, I can use the same code like this, and then I'm going to call the save method of the customer repository to save that customer into the database first. And in the when section to test the behavior, so we can call the customer repository dot delete by ID, and we can pass the of ID of this customer like this. And in the when section, next we can call customer repository dot find by ID, and here also we can pass the same ID, customer dot get customer ID, and this will return an object of optional of customer. So optional customer and if it successfully deleted in this line, there won't be a customer object. So that's why we are assigning it to a reference variable of type optional of customer. So then we can use this optional customer in the then section with the assert that and we can check for is empty like this. Let's run the test case. We got the result as test case passed, and here also we can see which underlying SQL is used in this test case. There is one thing we can improve in our test case. So every time when we want to create a custom object, we used it in this given section like this, and almost in all test case we had used that. But there is one way we can reduce this redundancy, and we have to create a method called setup, and we can annotate that method with at before each annotation, and then we don't need to use this inside our test case every time, because what this annotation does is this annotation will make that setup method uh, gets called before each and every test case. So let's do that now. And I'm going to use this code inside this setup method. And I will annotate this method with at before each annotation. So because we have to use this customer reference variable inside these other test cases, we cannot define this inside the setup method. Instead, we have to define it outside the setup method as an instance variable like this. And now I can comment out this code, and I will comment out this one, and here I will change it to customer because we are using the customer instead of customer one now. So I will comment out this also inside the get customer by ID test case. Here also I will comment out, and inside the delete customer test case also I will comment out the code. And we have now refactored the code to use this setup method, which has annotated with at before each annotation. And let's run the test cases again, and let's see uh, how it works. So instead of running test cases one by one, I'm going to run this class, which will run all the test cases inside this customer repository test class. So we can see all the test cases has passed, and so that means still our test cases are working as before.